Hello and welcome to Latter-day Profiles. I'm Brian Howard. We're here in St. George, Utah, and joining me today is Will Pierce. Will, welcome.
Thank you.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. Will, let me get the title right, Assistant Commissioner for Technical Education for the Utah System of Higher Education. That's a mouthful, but heavily involved with technical education for quite some time. Yeah. Prior to that, Master Electrician. Prior to that, military service, done a lot of things, been to a lot of places. I want to talk about that. You were telling me earlier you grew up in Massachusetts. Tell me about life growing up for you back in, I guess, in the big city.
In the big city in Massachusetts. So, yeah, it was, I didn't know any better. So it was good. Like, honestly, I felt a little bit out of place. I didn't know what it was. I couldn't put my finger on it. But I knew it just, something was off. And I think I was always supposed to be out west. and so my parents couldn't understand me. I couldn't understand them. My parents didn't go into education. They weren't educated folks, and very blue collar. My dad was, he did a lot of jack of all trade kind of things, but they had dreams of me going to college, but that was the last thing I ever wanted to do when I was a young person. And so I knew that the only way the only way I knew how to get away from that was to just leave. And so I joined the military, like right out of high school, to try to get away from that. So, yeah.
How did you choose, where to go in the military, which branch of service? Did you have any particular thing in mind when you decided to join the military?
Probably. I have an uncle in the late 70s. He had joined the Marine Corps, and I just always looked up to him and thought he was great. And if the Marine Corps was the right one for him, it was probably the right one for me. So I spent most of my young days in the recruiter's office and just listening to all of the talk and the stories of the Marines. And so when it was time to graduate high school, it was just second nature for me to go. My sister graduated high school just a year before me and also joined the Marines. And I don't know when she decided that or what her story was there, but I knew that was my path.
How was that experience? What was it like for you? Was it everything it was promised to be in the recruiting office?
It was nothing. It was just like probably every other story, but it was good. I enjoyed my time in the military. It was, there were some hard times, hard times, but it was certainly, it was good for me. It helped me mature and gain discipline, learn how to just organize my time, manage myself.
When you were an intelligence analyst, what's that mean? When did you get into that? What is that?
I'm not quite sure how I got into that. They actually just approached me in boot camp and said, "Hey, these are your test scores, and this is what we want you to do." And I didn't know anything, so I was like, "Oh, okay, if that's what you want me to do, I'll do that." And I loved it. It's actually one of the best jobs I could have had. An intelligence analyst spends a lot of time thinking about and working on other countries, their political systems, military systems. How does it all tie together? Why do they do what they do? And if they were to be in a combat situation, what is their combat kind of SOP? What's their standard procedure in a combat? And then briefing the local commanders on this is what we should be expecting and why. And it was a great opportunity for me, and really kind of sparked an interest in history and a love for government and politics, and maybe more than I should have.
Yeah, well, I think it would, probably, what a booster for like education. You weren't so excited about education before. Maybe this was something to say, hey, this is actually kind of cool.
Yeah, a little bit. Still, when I left the military, I still didn't have a desire to go to school, but I've always wanted to be an electrician. I always plugging wires in and making things work and lights come on was always fascinating to me. And but I went through my apprenticeship program. Being an electrician requires a 4-year apprenticeship program, as I went through that program, that's where it really sparked. Like, oh, I actually can do schoolwork. I wasn't the most scholastic kid as a high school student, and so I was like, oh, but I really can do this. And in your 20s, school's different than it is when you're 18, at least for me.
Well, tell me, I don't know about your background growing up. Was a religion part of your life growing up? And when did you get introduced to the Church of Jesus Christ?
Yeah, religion wasn't part of my growing up. For some reason, oddly enough, I always had a draw to religion, and I'm not sure why that is. Nobody in my family had religious background, and I would ask them about it, and they didn't know what to tell me or what to say. But I've always had a connection there. I don't know that I lived a great life as if religion was part of it, but I had a connection, a draw, a curiosity there. I was introduced to the church when I was in the military, and it had, I don't know, 7, 8 sets of missionaries. Never could figure it out. Had a couple of friends who really kind of helped me figure some things out, and got baptized. But probably like a lot of converts, I was active for a short period of time, and I kind of just slipped into my old ways. And then when I got out of the military is when I really came to find what a testimony was. And I don't know that I ever stopped believing in the church. I just had a hard time living it.
Mm. What was the catalyst once you got out of the military? Did you meet your wife then? What was the catalyst that kind of got you going to church and being active?
That's a great question. Yeah. I just had a couple of experiences that just helped me understand where I was supposed to be and why I was supposed to be there. And so when I moved to Mesquite is where I moved after the military, and just really, back in those days, it still is, very strong church community, and the people there just kind of wrapped themselves around me and helped me figure out life, which was good for me. And so being in Mesquite was a really good experience for me, and then and just got me on a better path.
Where did you meet your wife in Mesquite? Where did you meet your wife in?
Yeah, it was a couple of years after I had moved there. I had gotten some things straightened out, and life became easier. And then my wife moved to town. I don't think she knew why she was moving to town, but we quickly learned. And so she came there to teach school. So she taught in the Littlefield, Arizona school. It's just right across the Arizona border there. Yeah. And but lived in Mesquite, and we met at they didn't have a young single adult ward there or branch, but they took young single adults from the regular wards, and we just met every Monday and did activities together, and we just met doing that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So at that point, so you're married. Are you still doing your apprenticeship? Or you're finished with that? How did that all work out as you're becoming really good at an electrician? Obviously, you got really good at it.
Yeah, I was finishing up my apprenticeship when my wife and I met, and then I got my journeyman license, and right about the time we were getting married, and then she convinced me that I should use my GI Bill and go back to school. It wasn't something I wanted to do. and so the story goes that I told her, I said, okay, like I'll go to school, and I'll go get an associate degree, and we'll hang it on the wall and tell our kids that I support education. And she was like, okay. And she got more than she bargained for, because I fell in love with the academic nature and the environment, learning environment, and just kept going and going.
Well, let's talk about your academic path because you've been involved in a lot of different places. Tell us about finishing up your degree, and then you got
Mhm.
heavily involved at Salt Lake Community College and Davis Technical College. But so you started. I'm going to get an associate's degree, then you end up with a PhD. How did that happen?
Yeah, magic. And so yeah, I got a bachelor's degree, got my associate degree, and went on to UNLV. At the time, we were living in Nevada, and got a bachelor's degree in workforce education, which is an interesting degree, but I loved it, and convinced Salt Lake Community College to hire me as a program director over apprenticeship and building programs, and um, and so that moved me from Mesquite to Salt Lake, and I really didn't know what I was getting into, but I loved education. I loved doing what we're doing, and so and the technical education piece was fascinating to me because it really helped us understand that technical education is academic education. We just need to kind of connect those two, and um, and so I was there at Salt Lake Community College for about 5 years. And during that time, I had gotten a master's degree in educational leadership. I kind of realized this is where I wanted to be. This is what I wanted to do. And took another job at Davis Technical College in Kaysville and as a program director, and was later promoted. But and ended up finishing my Ph.D. while I was working at Davis. And so great programs.
You're very, very busy. In the meantime, you're having family, right? You're doing the school. How'd you manage all that? I mean, did you? I mean, night class, day class. How did you do it? Going through getting your PhD and working full
Yeah,
time and having a family.
yeah. Long nights and a wonderfully patient wife, and patient kids who were willing to be supportive and help as I go, and just give me some space to write. A PhD program, you just write all the time, read and write some more, and just patient family willing to give me some space, and not a lot of sleep and late nights and trying to get everything accomplished during the day and write at night. Yeah.
You ended up coming down here to Southern Utah, to the Southwest Technical College, there for a while, and then into your current position, which is involved with all of the technical colleges across the state of Utah. How was that move down here, and how's that been for you to come down to Cedar City and be involved with the technical schools down here?
Yeah. They, many years ago, my family and I, during a family home evening or just family council, I guess, where we just said, well, if we could move anywhere we want, where would we go? And we bounced a lot of ideas off of each other, and I don't know who brought it up, but we said, oh, we love Southern Utah. We love being in Mesquite, which I know is in Nevada, but it's still kind of Southern Utah.
Pretty close, yeah.
And but we didn't like the heat of St. George, or what if we go to Southern Utah and be in Southern Utah but not have all of the heat and the hard summers, and we landed on Cedar City, and we have camping, and there's the mountains, and it's college town, and we loved all of those kind of things. And at the time, I just thought it was just a dream. There was a technical college there, but people get into the university and they get into the technical college, they never leave because it's a great place to be. And then an opportunity arose, and I took advantage of it and moved our family down. It was perfect time for our family, perfect time for our life.
How did the position with the system of higher education come about? Because that was a change, right? Because there was a system with just the technical colleges, and they moved them in with the whole system of higher education, which is just a big change. They got all the universities in Utah that are bundled into one organization.
Yeah. And so there's 16 institutions now.
Wow.
8 technical colleges and 8, we call them degree granting institutions. And because of that, there's an associate commissioner for technical education, associate commissioner for academic education, and they opened the position for an assistant commissioner to work with that associate commissioner for technical education. And I knew her; we had worked together in a previous job, and I called her and said, "What does this mean? And what let's take a look." And just worked, and I applied, and they interviewed me, and part of my hope and really kind of what I needed was I didn't want to move back to Salt Lake, and we loved Salt Lake. It was a great place, but we were just embedded at the time in Cedar City and Enoch, and we just said, well, we don't want to move. And so it's a remote position generally, and it worked, and I had the experience, and I think she recognized that, and again, we worked before, so we knew each other, and that helped a lot, and it was appealing to me because you just get a broader sphere, broader look at things, and so it was a good job. So
let's talk about some of like your primary responsibilities. Let's talk about technical college, because things in the higher education sphere have changed a lot over the years, and technical colleges are growing and have a lot of appeal. So let's talk about your job description and the technical colleges in general.
Yeah. So we've been focused on a couple of different initiatives. There's a lot of initiatives right now in education, higher education. And the two that we're focused on primarily, at least I'm focused on, is one, the technical colleges offered all of their programs on a clock hour basis, and they all converted to a credit hour basis. So that conversion and helping institutions make that conversion and do those calculations and get them things through the accrediting bodies it's a lot of work. A lot of work, yeah. And then the other thing that we really tried to do is we believe that in technical education, in any program, you're training, gaining education to go out into a workforce, into an occupational area, and there are foundational skills that are necessary to do that, regardless of a region that you're in. So there's this initiative for program alignment, and we wanted to align those programs as much as we could. Certainly 100% alignment wasn't really appropriate because there are certain needs in St. George that are different than needs in Logan or in the eastern side of the state. But some percentage of that program should be aligned and strongly aligned. So helping faculty members, convening faculty members, bringing them together, helping them to see that vision and work on their curriculum and their outlines, proposals, and it's a lot of work. But there's 94 or 5 program out there. Not obviously, no school does that many, but collectively, it's a lot.
There's been a growth in technical education, and Utah has done really well. What do you attribute that? What's going on, and what makes it an attractive option for a lot of people?
I think the biggest attraction is their occupations where people can make a good living, and the training and education is short. It's not 4 years or longer in some occupations, and it's relatively cheap. The tuition for a technical education credit is much different than it is for an academic credit. And so I think people are thinking, well, it's shorter term, you can do it in usually a year or less, and tuition is cheaper, and we get out into good paying occupations. And you think of medical assistants and machinists and welders and licensed practical nurses and culinary arts are great occupations to be in.
I'm thinking if a parent finds out what you do and they say, "Hey, Will, my child's thinking about school. I don't know what to do with them. Tell me what would be, I guess, the pros and cons that you would give them. Should they go to technical college? Should they go to traditional university? What kind of conversation do you have with them when they have those kind of questions?"
Yeah, you'd think I would focus them right to technical education, but really the questions I want to ask is what does that son or daughter want to do? What are their dreams? What are their aspirations? And are they ready to go to a university? Our it's not Utah, nationally, our graduation rates from universities aren't stellar.
Right.
And so are they ready for that? Are they ready to go to a university? Are they ready for academic education? And if not, maybe technical education is a good place for them. But if they have dreams and aspirations to be a lawyer or an accountant or to go in the humanities, well, then they probably ought to go do that. I wouldn't want somebody in technical education that doesn't want to be there.
Sure.
But by the same token, there's a lot of people in academic education who would benefit greatly from being in technical education.
Are there common misperceptions, about technical education, about what people think? What have you run into when people ask you questions?
Yeah. Oftentimes people, they don't understand that these are good paying occupations. You can actually make a great living in all of these occupations that we provide this education for. And some of the others are like, well, you go into technical education when you can't do anything else if you're not academically suited or academically right. And there's that stigma that comes along with construction or automotive technology or machining that are just not necessarily true. People just don't understand. Once they get in there into these programs and they look at the curriculum, look at the rigor that's involved in them, things that these folks need to know, then they're like, oh, wow, we didn't realize that. So yeah, but there is a stigma, especially around people who just haven't been in around more technical
don't know
areas.
what they don't know, right?
Yeah.
That's a lot of us who don't know what we don't know. And I think about that as, I'm getting all those services done, like my car fixed or a house built. I want to have somebody who's well trained, right? I want to make sure.
Absolutely.
What do you see? I think, in higher education, do you see any trends, anything that you're noticing in the position you're at is across, obviously Utah, but maybe across the country? It seems like there's been COVID caused some things, interest level, anything in particular you're seeing?
Yeah, one of the things that we're seeing, and this is a national trend and probably something that will hit Utah soon, but it's not there yet, is the average age going to college is rising. The number of high school students who are graduating is lowering. The birth rates 20 years ago is lower than they were, when you or I were kids. And so we see fewer and fewer graduates of high school, which means that the people that are going to the university is higher and higher. And as that rises, universities and colleges are really focused on that right out of high school student. And we want to provide them all of the experiences that a 18 or 19, 20-year-old kid might want to experience. But when that average age of a college student is 25, they might not be as interested. Yeah. So that's an interesting trend. And what is that going to do in education generally? It might take a little bit of a paradigm shift. We also you hear the national conversation about, is there value to a bachelor's degree? Is that valuable anymore? And should we spend 4 or 5, 6 years, 7 years getting a bachelor's degree that may not contribute to our work experience? And that's challenging. So in my mind, I think, well, it depends on what you want to do, right? And again, if you want to be an accountant or a doctor or a registered nurse, then nursing is a very competitive field. To get into a nursing school is very competitive, and a benefit might be to get into a LPN program and make sure this is what you want, or CNA programs. See if this is what you really want to do, and get into and then grow with that. There's always opportunities to grow with technical education into a more academic field.
Well, I want to ask you, as we reflected back over your steps, gone through your life from either meeting missionaries and military, as you look back, can you see some direction, a little hand of the Lord pushing you in different directions? What's your take on that as you look back on?
Absolutely. There's no way that I would be where I am without that guidance. Sometimes like shove because I'm stubborn and hard headed sometimes. But yeah, they. I think I was telling my kids if I were to go back home to Massachusetts and find one of my school teachers and let them know what I do for a living, they'd be shocked. that'd be hard for them. But sometimes things happen for a reason, and you don't know why. I don't know what my draw was to Mesquite from Southern California and the big city of Massachusetts and big city in Southern California. You go to Mesquite and Bunkerville, Nevada, and I don't know really I know why I ended up there. I know how I ended up there. I don't know that why, and now I do, obviously. But that was pure guidance from Heavenly Father to help guide me there. And what brought me to Salt Lake City from there is pure. Sometimes I just call it dumb luck, but only to people that might not understand.
Yeah. Well, it's been a pleasure to talk with you. It's always good to see you, and wish you the best of luck on things. Thanks, Will, so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.